It's the most wonderful time of the rugby league season, ladies and gentlemen. The first third is in the books, and you want to know why? Because the speculation is done. The Game 1 teams are official for State of Origin Wednesday week. We are only 10 days away. Everything is done. The boys are in camp. They're going to be on the beers. And once the bonding session is over, it's full steam ahead to a core stadium sold out Wednesday week. Ladies and gentlemen, are you excited? If you're not, then leave the country. But as always, we've got a job to do, so let's look at the pros, let's look at the cons, and let's break down both of these State of Origin lineup. What I like, what I don't like. Now, for reference, you can go and check out both of my predicted teams that I had for State of Origin Game 1. I'll probably reference them a few times in this video, but if you want the full scope of the idea, then go check them out, and of course, it gets me some more cheeky views. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, leave a comment down below what were your initial thoughts on both of the Game 1 teams. And we'll start off by break down the great state of New South Wales, because Michael Maguire gets rugby league football. Now, I think it's fair to say we all know that picking the New South Wales teams, there seems to be much more speculation and much more excitement because, well, New South Wales are just way more into rugby league than Queensland. But this year was especially different because obviously a new coach, new ideas, and it was a fresh start after back-to-back very disappointing seasons. And I applaud Michael Maguire for making some really tough calls. And while I don't agree with all of them, I do agree with most. And I think this is the best New South Wales team we have seen for a long time. And obviously, it's no secret that the debate that really has been the head of rugby league headlines throughout most of the season, even the back half of last season, was surrounding the fullback. Obviously, James Tedesco, I've said it multiple times, in my opinion, he's the greatest New South Wales Blues fullback of all time. He was the captain, but unfortunately, he was coming off his worst series. And while he hasn't been too bad, sometimes it's not about who you've got and who you're dropping. It's about who you have to find a spot for in your rugby league football side. And Dylan Edwards has been the best fullback in the entire competition since about 2022. Arguably the unluckiest footballer in rugby league because, well, he's just been trying to get into these rep sides and he has done literally everything he can and he has finally been rewarded. I absolutely love Teddy. I thank him for everything he's done, and he's never really had a bad series. He did have a bad first two games last year, but like I said, it's not about Teddy really being bad. It's just about how good Dylan Edwards has been, and for me, you had to have him in this side. At this stage of both of their careers, unfortunately, I do think while Teddy isn't really bad or slowing down per se, I just don't think he's at his 2019 to 2020 level of form anymore. And I do think that there's nothing that Tedesco does great that Dylan Edwards can't do better. At this point in their careers, I just don't think you can go past Dylan Edwards. I don't think there's anything Tedesco is better than Edwards at. And the past recent years have shown through form and through results. I know Penrith are an absolutely stacked team, but Dylan Edwards has been arguably the most consistent player on the best team that we have potentially ever seen. So to try and justify leaving him out is an impossible task. I can safely say I would have been happy with either option. It does suck that Tedesco had to be dropped. He wasn't able to ride out on his own terms or ride out on a series win because he is the sort of player who deserves that. But Jakey Turbo was dropped from Origin 2 years ago and, well, he's the bloody captain now. Dylan Edwards was in my team for a reason, so I'm so stoked for him. Commiserations for Teddy, but I just think there is no possible way you can leave Dylan Edwards out of the best 17 out of any team you have available. Moving on to his Penrith teammate on the wing, probably one of the great wingers of all time. I know a lot of people don't like you saying that about current players, but Brian To'o, has there ever been a better meter eater in rugby league? This guy has quiet games and still manages to find 200 running meters out the back of his backside. I know wingers now are so important in the modern game because of guys like Brian To'o, and that is why 1000% he's one of the first names on the team sheet, not just for the New South Wales Blues, but Australia if he ever decides he wants to play in the green and gold. And partnering him with his best mate, Stephen Crichton. It looks like he's going to be the left side centre, and I was very much for keeping these two together. Another guy who is 100% locked into this team, one of the unsung heroes from last series. And credit to him, because while he definitely isn't playing up to the standard that he was at the Penrith Panthers, he's had to go to the Bulldogs. But unlike guys in the past, like Kikau, who had an injury-riddled last season, like Burton and like Fox, Stephen Crichton has gone to the Bulldogs and made a huge difference and is still finding ways to be involved in the game. And with New South Wales missing Turbo and missing Cleary, he could be the guy to stand up and make the big play. He is the biggest game player in this team for the Blues. And having a guy out there for Luai and Hines, spoiler alert, knowing he's out there so when the game is on the line, just chuck him the steed and let him go to work. I absolutely love the idea that Madge is keeping them together, but as we move to the right, and this is probably Madge Maguire's biggest risk, because while I did too have Zach Lomax on right wing, he has shown that he can be very, very error prone, especially in the big games, but it is a decision that I applaud, and he's partnering him with an absolute smoky that I don't think anyone saw coming, because Joey Suaalii is in the New South Wales team, which won't shock many, but he's chucked him at right centre. There was a feeling going into this year that if it wasn't for Billy Smith's injury that Joey Suaalii would be playing reserve grade, but now he's chucked on the right centre in State of Origin, and I get it. It's not a decision that I would have had the guts to make, and to be honest, I didn't have Suaalii in my side entirely, but he does bring a lot, and he can be so valuable to New South Wales, especially in the air and especially coming out of his own end. But with the injury to Staggs and with the injury, well, to nearly every bloody centre that plays and is eligible for New South Wales, I do think that Suaalii's defence is what's got him over the line, because I do think Queensland are going to be very reliant on Reece Walsh, and that gap between the half and the centre is going to be where they're going to target, especially with Walsh's quick speed, which is why our edges are so important, and that's why I think they've got Suaalii in there, a big, strong defender, and like Critter, he's going to have plenty of X factor in attack, so I can see why Madge has got him. It's a big risk to partner them together. I think picking one may have been the safe option, but it's not a Tavita Pengai gamble. This is one that actually makes sense, and that's why I can live with it. Because to be fair, it's still one of the best defensive centers in the comp and the best winger on form so far this year. As for the halves, he's gone my route, so you're welcome, Michael. It's Jarome Luai at the number 6 and Nicho Hynes at the 7. Obviously, we've got a calf issue that we're going to have to talk about for the next 10 days. So obviously, these halves can change, and that's why they've got both Matt Byrne and Luke Keary in the extended squad. I think, though, that Jarome Luai at the number 6 is going to be the focal point of especially the attack. I think Madge watched that performance against the Sharks, and looking back to what Luai did for Samoa, leading them to the World Cup final as the number 7. A week ago, I said Luai was my 6, and a lot of people had some pushback. A lot of people last week didn't have Luai anywhere near their New South Wales Blues side, and I get it because obviously he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, especially those at the NRL 360 desk. But he had a great game against the Warriors, but they still didn't manage the win. So Luai said, all right, we'll go to the home ground of the best team in the competition and we'll put 42-0 on them. Not only was it a performance that would get Benji Marshall so hot under the collar, but it's a performance that everyone went, yeah, that's why Jarome Luai is the guy. And while I do think he's going to be in the 6, I do think that with the questions around Nicho Hynes and just with the confidence that Luai will bring, I could easily see him playing both sides of the field as the main orchestra on this team. Now, I do think Nicho Hynes will be there to be that game manager, and I definitely could see him as well as Luai playing both sides on the field. I don't think New South Wales will go a left side, Luai right side, Hynes sort of situation. I do think they're both going to combine a lot and both play both sides of the field, because both of them do that at Clubland. Obviously, Luai hasn't, but in the last 2 weeks when he's been the halfback, he's definitely done that. And Hynes has been doing that for years at this point. So I don't think that Madge should just do Luai on the left, Hynes on the right. I think they both should be combining together through the middle, down the left, down the right, with all these weapons outside of them. I think that could be a deadly halves combo. I covered a lot of this when I did my Who Should Be in the New South Wales halves video a few weeks ago, so go check that out if you want some deeper analysis. But it's the halves pairing I would have gone with. It's the halves pairing that's in form, and I can't wait to see what Luai and Hynes can do together. I think Luai off the field is going to be as valuable in the camp as he will be on the field. He's going to bring so much confidence, especially for the new debutants, especially for Nicho Hynes, because he's a winner, and most importantly, he's a little cocky bastard. And then we get into the greatest decision a rugby league coach has ever made. Michael Maguire in the number 8 jersey has selected a new captain, Jake Trbojevic. There isn't a man who was born out of the great state of New South Wales who bleeds more sky blue than this bloke. There's a reason when these filthy Queenslanders talk about their New South Wales teams that they leave Jakey out, and that's because they don't want to get their ribs broken. We're all guilty of it, me included, but we always focus on the attacking side of rugby rugby league, but when there's the best defensive player in the world currently, you cannot leave him out. No one plays with more heart. No one plays with more passion. You can see why Michael Maguire has selected Jake. He's got a huge motor, so he's going to play big minutes. He's going to crack so many ribs. He's going to puncture so many lungs. And while he's no Jason Taumalolo, he's always guaranteed a quick play of the ball. And I think Jake is going to play close to 80 minutes. I really feel that. I think there's one bloke on the bench who is there to give him a 20-minute spell. But there's no one I want to listen to do a speech and lift the trophy on stage more than Jakey Trbojevic. But then we move on to the number 9, and this is probably the one I disagree with most. The Suaalii one was most surprising. I know a lot of people had Reece Robson as their starting dummy half. And I get why. He's a huge body, and obviously Madge has a defensive-focused mind, but I do think with the halves that New South Wales have picked, they haven't played too much footy together. I think that Api Koroisau at number 9 would have been a huge point of difference, and both Nico and Luai have played with crafty and dominant number 9s before. Obviously, Api at the Panthers and obviously Blake Braley in the Sharks. But I guess if Madge is looking for another bloke to smash a few Queensland ribs, then Reece Robson is 100% your guy, and he's not going to have to play 80 minutes looking at the makeup of this team. And it's not like he's been bad so far this year. Then, of course, number 10, like Jake, this is another guy who was locked in. Our front row's been locked in for the longest time, and if Payne Haas can finally take over a series, get one over Paddy Carrigan, put in the performance during State of Origin we've all been waiting for him to, then not only will New South Wales get the win, then he'll definitely be a smoky for the Wally Lewis medal. Not to say that Payne Haas hasn't been good in Origin, because I think he's played more good Origin games than he has bad ones. We're just waiting for him to do what Carrigan does, for what Cotter does, what Collins does, and take over a State of Origin series as the man. Payne Haas is 1,000% locked in, and there's no doubt he's going to be the best front rower in the world one day, if you don't think he already is. Liam Martin at 11, Angus Crichton at 12. Both of those boys picked themselves. I get why Madge has started them both. It's a very safe option. Both of them have been so important to New South Wales in the past, and both have played some incredible games. Liam Martin was probably the best for New South Wales in last series. He completely changed the game in game 1, and you could argue that him being off the field for the first 15 to 20 minutes is what cost us in the back end. And having a guy with his aggression who can protect Nicho Hynes, who will be nervous as hell as the New South Wales halfback, is a great decision. Angus Crichton on the left, probably the form back rower of the last month. He can also cover centre, is probably why I would have him on the bench. But him and Luai have played great there. Think back to 2022 Game 2. Angus Crichton can also play in the middle. He had to be in this team somewhere, and it's an incredible turnaround from where he was at the start of the season. And a man we've been waiting to see play Origin for so long, Cameron McInnes. He has no teeth, and that's why he's built to wear the sky blue. I absolutely love him starting. He also will be covered for Reece Robson if anything happens at 9, or he just needs a cheeky rest. And he's another one of these players who's absolutely going to break a rib or puncture a lung for Queensland. I think it's a great starting 13. And on the bench, Isaiah Yeo. Don't worry, Isaiah Yeo fans. He's on the bench, but he's going to be playing the majority of this game. I do think that for the majority of the 80 minutes, we're going to see a middle forward pack of Jake Trbojevic, Payne Haas, and Isaiah Yeo. And I do think that Isaiah Yeo's ball playing is going to be so incredibly important, especially when he's connecting with the spine. I think over the last month or so, Isaiah Yeo has played some of the best club footy I've seen him play in a while, and that's because he is running first, and I think Game 3 last year was nearly the best performance he's had in Origin. In the first 2 games, he was sort of like Tedesco, overplaying his hand a bit too much, and when he's standing flat and passing it to another flat front rower just to get belted, that's not what I like to see. But when he's on the beat, he tucks it, and he runs over a Queenslander is when I'm getting hot for the Dubbo boy. Then obviously Ola Kawatu at 15, well overdue. I would have started him, but I do think he's going to be seeing the majority of game time. You could make the argument he's been the best back rower over the past few years. He probably should have been here in 2022. He definitely should have been here in 2023. His work rate is out of this world. He's probably the best defensive back rower in the competition, and it takes about 50,000 blokes to tackle him, especially when they're all going to be Queenslanders. So happy for him. And number 16, Spencer Leniu. I know he's had a very mixed 2024, and that's the nicest way to say it. It hasn't hasn't played too many games. But when I reference the guy who's there for 20 minutes to give Jake Trbojevic a rest, it's this bloke. He absolutely changes games. We saw that in the 2022 final series for Penrith, especially in that prelim final against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And you could argue, most importantly, Payne Haas, Jakey, Isaiah Yeo, all these guys are really nice. So we need an absolute... And speaking of those, Hudson Young at 17. Unfortunately, Hudson had an awful State of Origin debut series last year, so hopefully he can turn it around. Madge has had a lot to do with him, as he has with most of the Canberra Raiders boys. So I think there's an opportunity here for Hudson Young to really establish himself as a New South Wales stay. Matt Byrne, 18th man, love to see it. Luke Keary at 19th man is probably the one out of the entire squad that I don't like, mainly because he wins to play for Queensland. But hey, maybe Madge has just got him in the Blue Mounts to be a punching bag for the New South Wales Blues. Mitch Barnett at 20th man, I absolutely love this. I would have probably had him over Spencer Leniu, but I get why he hasn't for the makeup of this side. Overall, I absolutely love it. I absolutely froth it, and it's the best New South Wales team I've seen in a while. Probably Suaalii and Reece Robson are the main ones that I probably disagree with. But unlike Tavita Pengai Jr., I can actually see what Madge is trying to do. And when you have an Origin coach like that, I absolutely love him. Not to mention making Jake captain, the greatest decision in State of Origin history. But that's enough talking about the greatest state on planet Earth. Let's move over to the Queensland Maroons. And look, it's all right. Obviously, with Queensland, there's never much to talk about because they usually pick and stick. Well, there's one huge omission, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But the fullback picks himself, the best fullback on form over the last 18 months, and it's great to see the Form 2 fullbacks going head-to-head. Reece Walsh, especially without Cameron Munster, is going to be so important for this Queensland side. He's had an injury-riddled year so far this year, but I do think when he's played even better than he was last year. He may be the most impossible player to defend in the entire competition, and down our edges, he's going to cause absolute havoc. He'll be all for the better for the run, especially in the grand final last year, and coming into Origin last year, there were so many questions around, and New South Wales made a point to go after him, and unfortunately for me, he just laughed in all of our faces. I know he may be the hottest man on planet Earth with the greatest eyelashes on planet Earth, but don't make a mistake thinking that this guy isn't tough, and most importantly, he's a bit of a grub. Then at number 2, another guy who picks himself, Xavier Coates. Now, Xavier Coates, I think, was left out of game 1 last year, but when you've been looking at what he's done for the Storm, there's no way you can't pick him. He's probably the best finisher in rugby league at the moment, and he's shown that, like Critter for the Blues, when the game is on the line, there's probably just going to be a situation where you give the steed into Xavier Coates and let him jump from the 50-metre line, because he'll probably find a way to put it down in the corner. Valentine Holmes is in the centres, and look, I know he's had a rocky start to the year, but like I said in my lineup video, when you've had 50,000 good games for Queensland, you're allowed a poor one. He was pretty disappointing in Game 3 of last series for Queensland, but if there's anyone Dane Gagai has passed the torch to, it's Valentine Holmes. He has been so good for Queensland over so many years. It makes sense with the makeup of this team to put him at centre, and when you got that combination with Tom Dearden, and when you got a guy like DCE and Reece Walsh feeding him the ball, I'm sure Valentine Holmes will do something special to break my little heart. And don't worry, Queensland, because if all else fails, your other centre is probably one of the best rep football outside backs over the past few years. The Hammer has been electric ever since making his Origin debut when he was literally coming off the bench for the Cowboys. Ever since moving to the Dolphins, Hammer has become a superstar, and his Queensland form has been a big part of that. Another guy who could have easily been handed the Wally Lewis medal last series. He was electric in Game 1 and Game 2. He's a walk-up start now for Australian Kangaroos, so of course he's going to be there for the little Queensland Maroons. However, Murray Taulagi is an interesting one. Obviously, Selwyn Cobbo is still technically in this team. I don't know how you can go past Cobbo, but Billy Slater absolutely loves Murray Taulagi. We saw it last year. We got picked out of absolutely nowhere. He did an amazing job in 2022, and ever since, Billy Slater has fallen in love with him. Another guy who Dane Gagai has probably passed the torch to in the sense that they play decent at club, but in the Origin arena, they go to a whole different level. I would have had Cobbo there personally, but maybe Slater just wants a safe pair of hands he can rely on. Obviously, no Cameron Munster, but Tommy Dearden probably had one of the great Origin debuts in 2022 Game 3, so it makes sense why he's in this side. It would be very New South Wales to go with Ezra Mam, so of course Queensland went with Tommy Dearden, and that effort play on Selwyn Cobber earlier this year is why Billy Slater would love Tom Dearden. He's an absolute freak. He can run for days. No half probably plays with as much passion as Tommy Dearden, and that's why he's easily the number 6 choice. And with no Cameron Munster, a lot of the onus is going to fall on DCE. Obviously, the captain of Queensland, and I don't know how this guy has a winning percentage as Queensland captain, especially with the way the squads have looked the last couple of years. But I guess he's just got that GOAT factor. With no Munster, DC is going to have an exceptional series, sort of like how he played in Game 3 2022, where he was so important. And for the last few years, he's absolutely kicked the New South Wales Blues to death. It's usually around this time of year, once Origin rolls around, and that DCE reminds us all why he's a Queensland legend and why he is arguably the best halfback in rugby league. And with no Munster, this could be a real defining series when it comes to DCE being among the legends of Queensland. It's going to be up to him to run the team. It's going to be up to him to get the ball to Reece Walsh in good places. And if Queensland can just match New South Wales in the forwards, what they've seemed to do in the past few series, unfortunately DCE is almost like a robot at Origin. And with the inexperience of Luai and especially Nico Hines, DC may be looking at his first Wally Lewis medal and potentially his last Origin series. I really hope so, because I'm sick of losing. Obviously, Queensland forwards have been dealt a huge blow with no Tino, and it looks like Tommy Flegler is going to be returned soon, but not in time for Game 1. That being said, just throw arguably the 2 best players for Queensland in 2023 out there. Ruben Cotter, the Wally Lewis medalist last year and thoroughly deserved. He went out and played bloody centre in New South Wales, couldn't crack him. He's had an up and down year, but in saying that, a bit like Jakey Javovic, this guy's heart and soul, and he's going to put his pride on the line. He's going to run for 80 minutes. He's going to tackle all the big dogs for New South Wales. And his leg speed through the middle against some tired New South Wales forwards could make the biggest difference. Obviously, Billy Slater is sticking with the pick and stick for his dummy half number 14 duo. Ben Hunt stays, and honestly, I know we've been waiting for the day that Harry Grant just becomes a Queensland starter, but the way Ben Hunt has played so far for an improved Dragons side is nothing short of unreal. I think he's got 20 try assists, and we're not even halfway through the season for the Dragons. I know he gets targeted a bit defensively, Benny Hunt, but that's because when he's on the edge, he has to make decisions, but he's a hell of a tackler, and he's proven that over the past few years. Another guy who will probably be entering the final years of his Origin career. I bet he wants to put in a good performance so he can get a few series in once DC does retire from rep football. There's a reason why Mal is sticking with this 9 and 14 combo for Australia, so it makes sense why Billy's doing it for Queensland. And like Ruben Cotter, another guy who had one hell of a series for Queensland last year. He doesn't have any Tedesco to jump over Lindsay Collins this time around. But with no Tino and no Tommy Flegler, Lindsay Collins could be the most important player for Queensland. I'm sure he's going to play huge minutes. Looking at the bench, I think that will be the case. But Lindsay Collins has been so good, so incredibly good. Not just for Queensland, but also the Roosters. So it makes sense why he's starting in this rugby league football side. Then we move on to the back row, where Billy Slater has thrown his pick and stick idea out the absolute window. No, David Fifita is a huge call that I wouldn't have had the balls to make, mainly because I do not understand why David Fifita has been dropped from this side. Obviously, Sua and Nanai are the starting back rowers, both right-sided players, and I don't think either warrants the form to kick David Fifita out of this side. If this was named after the first 4 weeks where the Titans looked like an absolute horror show, then maybe I understand, but even then, he was easily the Titans' best player, and they just came off a huge upset win over the Brisbane Broncos, where David Fifita was arguably the most important player on the field. This could be some Uncle Nick shenanigans, but I'm not sure how much power he has over the Queensland Maroons. But he's probably the best back rower in rugby league, the best left back rower, and he's picked 2 right back rowers to start. Obviously, fringe first graders always play well for Queenslanders, and Sua and Nanai are much better than, I guess, fringe first graders. But it just doesn't make sense to me. I would have had Sua on the bench and Fifita starting. I think you want a guy like David Fifita as much on the field as possible, and he was great last series as well. So obviously, we'll wait and see what Billy has to say about that. But as for the number 13, he's the future Queensland captain, and I said for most of last year that, in my opinion, he's the best middle forward in rugby league. Pat Carrigan, he might play 80, and if he does, it'll be probably the most impressive 80 out of any player on the field. He's like the love child in terms of the way he plays of Isaiah Yeo and Payne Haas, and that is some credit. One of the best ball carries in the competition. Awesome ball playing, but more importantly, he knows when to pass it, when to go short, when to go long, and when to tuck it and just go himself. He's also one of the best defenders in rugby league. So while I don't want to just gloss over Paddy Carrigan, if you want me to suck him off, you can literally watch any other video ever. Obviously, number 14 is Harry Grant. Like we spoke about with the Ben Hunt thing, why would you break what isn't fixing? I do get why a lot of people just want Harry Grant to be the 9 because like a lot of the guys I'm talking about, you want them on the field as much as possible. And he's probably had the best start of his season, especially since Craig Bellamy has given him the captaincy. I do think with no Munster that Harry Grant is going to have a much bigger role for Queensland. And once he comes on the field, I don't think he'll be leaving it. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Harry Grant does have the best series he's had in his Origin career, which would definitely be saying something. Moe Fotuaika, after the first month, there's no way in hell you'd have him in this team, but ever since the injury to Tino, he's probably been one of the unsung front rowers on the entire competition. He's not going to have to play big minutes considering the rotation that they've got, and he's a bloke that could easily change the game if Queensland need him to, because spoiler alert, Jakey Javovic is going to crack every Queenslander's ribs. Jermaine Hopgood gets an Origin debut and probably a long time coming. I had him in my side. If there's anyone who can replicate what Pat Carrigan can do, even though it's probably nowhere near it, it is Jermaine Hopgood. When we talk about a guy who's a great defender but also has a tough carry who can ball play and making the right decision, Jermaine Hopgood is in that elite class, so it makes sense why he's in the team. He was in the squad last year, definitely deserves a crack. But then we've got Selwyn Cobbo at the number 17 position, which raises a few cheeky eyebrows. I'm not sure what role he's going to play, whether he is going to come on as a forward, but I think the move to cover or having him in the forwards doesn't make sense to me. I would have had him starting in the outside backs, but I guess Billy Slater, and this may shock some, knows more about what he's doing than I do. Felice Kafusi, 18th man. Great to see him come back into the squad. I don't think that he's been as good as he did last year, but I guess maybe Billy just wants him there, especially when you got two young back rowers who are going to need all the help they can get. And saying that, the number 19 is Brendan Piakora, and then of course Ezra Mem is in there as well. Overall, as always, Queensland is pretty much a team that we all predicted, although the Selwyn Cobbo and the David Fifita thing has me scratching my head, but I guess hopefully it works out well for New South Wales. And there you go, the longest page video of all time, so I'll wrap up this quickly. Thank you to everyone who made it this far in the video. Nearly half an hour, but it's State of Origin football. It's the greatest day for Manly since the 2011 Premiership because my two favourite players are literally the State of Origin captains. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what are your thoughts on the State of Origin Game 1 teams down below. Subscribe if you haven't yet already. Smash that like button and I'll get out of here as quick as possible. Enjoy your State of Origin football, and don't worry, this was a long half an hour, but we still got 9 more days to talk about State of Origin Rugby League football.